Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Capital Budget Subcommittee. We're here for the purpose of capital budget hearings. I just wanted to go over quickly the order. We're going to start with the University System of Maryland, followed by University of Maryland, Baltimore campus, University of Maryland College Park, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Bowie State University, Morgan State University, Towson, Salisbury, and the miscellaneous grants. So we'll start first. Just for a little bit of housekeeping, one is if you can make sure your phones are silent or on vibrate. Second is that if we have your written testimony, we appreciate, out of courtesy for everyone, summarize, hit the important points because you're all very important and important to us. So, but again, brevity means a lot, but your voice also matters. So with that, we'll start out with the University of Maryland. Ms. Baker.
Thank you. As you can see on the front page, there are two projects for System Office, the Caldwell Center, and the annual facility renewals projects. The recommendations are on page 2, and that is approve GO authorizations, pre-authorizations, amendments to authorizations, and approve all ARBs. So I just wanted to provide an update on UMGC's renovation in the Adelphi building, in which the General Assembly added funds in fiscal 23 through 25. The budget includes a deauthorization of the 23 funds due to the project being completed and deauthorizes the 24 and 25 funds due to cancellation of the project. In addition, the CIP funds, programs funds in 29 and 30 for the renovation of the administrative building, which is estimated cost $42 million. I wanted to note that UMGC plans to use $10 million of the $72 million from the sales of its Largo's properties for this project. In addition, they do have $242 million in their plant funds. The discussion of the Caldwell Center starts in the middle of the page, and this is being done in 2 phases. Phase 1 replaces the existing 29-year-old fabric roof that is at the end of its useful life, and Phase 2 will refurbish the existing central plant that is also at the end of its useful life. The 26 budget includes $7.1 million GO funding, and that's $2 million more than program in last year's CIP, and this is related to the refurbishment of the central plant, in which an additional chiller needs to be added as well as a new generator since the current ones are at capacity. In addition, the cost to replace the fabric roof is $2.5 million less than budget due to the initial construction budget being based on an older estimate. Turning to USM's facility renewal backlog, this is shown on Exhibit 1 on page 5. Projects are categorized as either deferred maintenance or programmatic improvements. Deferred maintenance projects total $2.9 billion. Of which the electrical and mechanical systems account for 86% of the total. Programmatic improvements, which include renovations and remodeling, totals $2.8 billion. And overall, at $3.2 billion, College Park accounts for 55% of the total renovation costs. At its November 22nd, 2022 meeting, the Board of Regents adopted an updated facility renewals policy. The most significant change is a shift in focus from inputs to outcomes to better reflect progress institutions are making to address their backlog. Under the revised policy, institutions are required to report their Facility Condition Index, or FCI, and Exhibit 2 on page 6 shows the FCI over 6 years by institution. Now, the index shows the percentage of deferred maintenance spending relative to replacement costs. A lower score indicates facilities are in relatively good condition, and when tracked over time, shows if conditions are improving or not. Overall, 6 institutions experienced improvements in their FCI during this time period. Reducing the backlog is a priority for the Board of Regents and the Chancellor, and has set a target that an institution's spending on facility renewal should be 2% of its current replacement value of facilities greater than 10 years old. Since the previous policy did not fully capture all the funds, both operating and capital, expended by institution, a directive from USN clarified what expenditures can be included in institution's calculation of its 2% spending goal, and these are listed on page 7. Overall, USM is attacking the backlog through various funding sources, and this is shown on Exhibit 3 on page 8. Prior to 2020, facility renewals was mostly funded from the institution's operating budgets and ARBs. Even though over the years institutions have increased their spending on renewals, these funds account for a smaller share of spending, declining from 70% to almost 50% by 2025, while the expenditures related to renovation projects in the CIP have increased from 17% to 43%. And this reflects USM's focus on renovation and replacement projects rather than new projects. You'll see that in 23, institutional spending decreased by $32.5 million, which may be attributed to the $65 million in PAYGO, which under the revised policy counts towards their 2% goal. In 25, institutions budgeted $183.2 million for facility renewal projects, but BPW reductions result in a 1% reduction of USM appropriations, and this resulted in some institutions reducing their spending on facility renewal projects. Now, the allowance includes a 5% or $111.1 million reduction to USM's appropriation, of which institutions plan to reduce overall spending on facility renewals by an estimated $11 million. So we asked the Chancellor to comment on the impact of the institutions reducing spending on facility renewal and their ability to meet the 2% target. Now, institutions can transfer operating funds to the plant funds, which is like a savings account in which institutions can set aside funds for anticipated capital expenditures. As listed on page 9, so funds can be set aside for various purposes, including facility renewal, deferred maintenance, and debt service. As shown on Exhibit 4 on page 10, between 23 and 24, state-supported plant funds decreased by $139 million due to spending on capital projects. Moving on to the 2% target on Exhibit 4 on page 10, compares the spending of facility renewals by institutions based on the previous and revised policy. When including projects in the CIP or funded by system, it results in some institutions exceeding their 2% target, and you'll note that Bowie exceeds target by 16.6 percentage points. If not for the inclusion of these projects in the CIP, 5 institutions would have fallen below the target. Since the inclusion of the CIP projects does not provide an accurate picture of how much institutions are spending on renewal or if they are consistently achieving the target, the system office should continue to report on the progress institutions are making towards a 2% target when excluding and including the impact of the CIP. And this concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do you have, okay. Sorry about that. We've got important work on back here. Thank you very much. Any questions for the analyst? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chancellor, come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Zucker, members of the subcommittee, I appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of the governor's capital budget recommendations for the university system. And I am joined by Senior Vice Chancellor Alan Herbst, as well as Mark Beck, who is our Director of Capital Planning. Thanks, as always, to Sarah Baker for her expert analysis, her frankly deep understanding of the system. I'm going to save most of my time for the question asked by Ms. Baker, but let me share my appreciation for your support of our capital program, which, as you know, is essential to our persistent, growing academic and research excellence. An excellence that keeps us among the nation's most productive, most innovative, most admired systems of public higher education. It should come as no surprise that our capital requests this year primarily concern renovation and replacement projects. We care about taking care of what we have. And that provides a perfect segue to the question we've been asked to address, namely, what's the impact of our university's commitment to reducing facilities renewal expenditures and their ability to meet the 2% target? I did address this issue in our operating budget hearing, so I want to, again, reprise those challenges. Spending reductions are going to grow our deferred maintenance backlog. It could increase our costs in outlying years as our campus buildings age. And cuts to deferred maintenance will inhibit our work to keep critical building systems functional, which could in turn, yes, disrupt student learning, yes, jeopardize the safety of the building, student safety, employee safety. Several universities have detailed critical building systems that are already failing and already disrupting operations. And that's why, given the impact of the operating budget and the fact that we will need to reduce this commitment to facilities renewal, it's terribly important that your strong support for facilities renewal and whole building renovation and replacement will help us in addressing these challenges. So I thank you for your support, and of course, we're happy to answer any of your questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chancellor. Senator Rosebeth.
Nice to see you. I've been beating this drum for decades, so it's not new. I'm glad to see progress on facilities renewal. I understand that money is fungible, but I don't really understand why other fiscal changes you're talking about are determinative of meeting the 2%. And the whole point of the 2% is to provide some discipline in budgeting. So I don't really see the connection. Yes, if you have less money, you can do less things, but the point of the 2% is to put a higher priority on facilities renewal than on other things.
You want to comment?
Hello, Senator.
Hi.
I take your question, and we certainly are committed to facilities renewal. As we put together our response to the proposed 5% cut to the operating budget, when we talk about a cut to facilities renewal, we mean the monies that are in the operating budget that the universities themselves spend on that. Given what we know already, and given the challenges and pressures we think are ahead of us, we had to make balanced decisions between cuts to facilities renewal, cuts in that would affect personnel, cuts that would affect other operating. And we opted to take a balanced approach in taking cuts in various places to try and maintain the same levels of service, the same levels of building structure that we currently have. As we all continue to face the challenges we're likely to face in the future, we're going to continue to be thoughtful about this. But we took these cuts as part of cuts to many, many areas, and we did the least damage we could in our estimation.
Mr. Chairman, just briefly, I believe me, I understand it, having served on the Board of Regents and on the Finance Committee of the Board of Regents. I get what I would call the politics of it. But the reason that the Regents adopted this goal and the reason we've been supportive of this goal is to provide to help you in the internal politics of this by saying we may have to do some short-term things we don't want to do other places, because facilities renewal is very much, as you pointed out, very much related to the long-term asset value. And cutting facilities renewal increased our long-term costs. So I would just underline 3 times, we're here to back you up on protecting facilities renewal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the Chancellor or the team? Okay, seeing that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Speaker, why don't you come back up and we'll do the University of Maryland, Baltimore campus.
Okay, so UMB has 3 projects in the CIP, with only the School of Social Work receiving funding in '26. Discussion of the new School of Social Work starts on page 5. And the '26 budget includes $5.8 million more than programmed last year, reflecting an accelerated schedule. And this is to allow the project to be completed by August 27, so the building will be open for the fall semester. Total cost of the project increases by $3.6 million due to the addition of energy efficient enhancements that will make it a net zero facility. And this will improve the energy efficiency of a building by about 48%. So DLS is recommending reducing the GO funding by $5 million for those costs attributed to the sustainability components. And a related recommendation adds language to use PAYGO funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund Energy Efficiency Account to fully replace the reduced GEO authorization. We also asked the president to comment if any of the sustainability elements of their project are eligible for tax credits through the Inflation Reduction Act, and if so, what is the expected value of those credits, tax credits? Discussion of the out-year projects began on page 6. And the first is the new dental ambulatory surgery center, in which $2.3 million was authorized for this project, and the total cost has increased from $2.8 million to $10.1 million, but the state share only increases $500,000, with the School of Dentistry providing the remaining funding. And this increase is related to current Medicaid and Medicare eligibility standards, which require the suite to be physically distinct from the other clinics. And without the separation, the center would not be able to bill Medicaid or Medicare. Discussion on electrical substation and electrical infrastructure starts on page 7. And this is a multi-year phase project that will construct a new substation at the north and south end of campus and upgrade the existing electrical infrastructure. As programmed in the CIP, funding is paused until 28 due to delays in receiving developers' agreements for Baltimore City and challenges to integrating the technology put in place to manage the new grid. These factors have led to substantial delays in the completion of later bid packages. UMB states the bid packages have been coming in lower than the original estimates, resulting in a cash balance to fund construction in the intervening years. The recommendations are back on page 2 and 3, and those are related to the GEO funding for the School of Work being reduced by $5 million with a PAYGO recommendation that would replace it with $5 million in special funds. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Baker? Thank you very much. Dr. Gerald, oh, perfect. Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Dr. Bruce Gerald, President of the University of Maryland, Baltimore. I'm accompanied by Dr. Dawn Rhodes, who's Senior Vice President for Admin and Finance. I'd like to thank Chair Zucker, Vice Chair McCray, and the members of the committee for your support. Lastly, I would like to also thank Sarah Baker for her usual thoughtful analysis. The University of Maryland, Baltimore concurs with the Department of Legislative Services recommendations. We remain deeply grateful to the Governor and the General Assembly for your support of all of our projects. I'm particularly thankful for the $3.6 million that she mentioned for our sustainability improvements in our new School of Social Work. This includes solar panels, geothermal exchange system, and high-performance envelope. This funding will allow us to have one of the few green buildings in both the USM and the rest of the state. It's a model. I have been asked to briefly comment on our project's eligibility for U.S. clean energy investment tax credits introduced through the Inflation Reduction Act. We expect both the School of Social Work and our central electrical infrastructure projects to be eligible for this. We have forecasts that in the School of Social Work will be eligible up to $650,000 in credits. For the central electrical system, will be eligible for up to $900,000 in credits. It is our hope that these credits can be used to further UMB's energy efficiency goal. However, the new federal administration being present, we're unsure as to whether these tax programs will continue or not. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Mr. President, I just had one question. So the School of Dentistry, you guys have been doing a great job. Are you short any money on that, or is that you good to go?
The project is fully funded between state dollars and the dollars from the School of Dentistry.
That's great. Well, thank you for your hard work there, and great project.
And thank you for your support.
Of course, of course. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much. Ms. Baker. University of Maryland, College Park.
Well, thank you, Okay, there are 3 projects receiving funding in '26. Discussion of the interdisciplinary engineering building starts on page 5, and this leverages $58.2 million from the Clark Foundation and will provide space to allow the engineering programs to grow. Now, according to the CIP, the total cost of the project increases $19.7 million to $243.6 million, and this accurately reflects the cost of the project. The project also includes various sustainability components, including wastewater recovery, energy-efficient mechanical equipment, and provisions for a photovoltaic array. As with UMB, DLS is recommending reduction of GO funding by $4 million for those costs attributed to sustainability components, and there is a related recommendation to use PAYGO funds to replace the GO authorization. And we also asked the president to comment if any of the sustainability elements of the project are eligible for tax credit through the Inflation Reduction Act, and if so, what is the expected value of the tax credit? The next project receiving funding is a standalone facility renewal initiative to address critical deferred maintenance projects. The list of the projects funded in '26 are listed on page 7. It should be noted the CIP pauses funding in '27 and resumes in '28. So DLS is recommending deferring the $7.5 million of GO funds budgeted for '26 and instead provide them in '27. The project has been slow to encumber and expend funds, and projects proposed for '26 can still proceed using prior unencumbered authorization and the $5 million in revenues bonds authorized in '26. The last project of the graduate student housing site development starts on page 8. And this was added to the '24 CIP to continue development of 10.75 acre site to make it more financially feasible for a developer to build below market rate graduate housing. Note that the General Assembly added language in '25 budget expressing the intent that the state would provide $5 million annually in '26 through '32 for the production and acquisition of below market graduate housing at University of Maryland College Park and the City of College Park. However, the CIP does not have any additional funding after '26. The discussion of out-year projects begins on page 9, and just wanted to note that the total cost of Health and Human Services Complex increases $43.3 million due to the inclusion of the renovation of 2 floors in the original Cole Fieldhouse South Wing and the outfit shell space for the Academy of Innovation of Entrepreneurship, and that will be funded with non-budgeted funds. Also, the total cost for the renovation and addition of Benjamin Building is estimated to increase by $40.6 million due to locating the non-research components of the School of Public Health in the renovated Benjamin Building. Recommendations are on page 3 and 4 related to GO funding for the new interdisciplinary engineering building to be reduced by $4 million with a PAYGO recommendation that would add the $4 million of special funds. And also, in addition, on page 4 is a recommendation to defer the $7.5 million in GO funding for campus-wide building system and infrastructure projects to '27. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Senator Rosepep.
I have a question on rental housing, which, as folks from College Park know, is close to my heart. It seemed to be described in your document as only related to the new Leonardtown project, the development of the 10.7 acre site. And that, again, we had this conversation last year. I mean, the money is intended for a variety of graduate student options, including acquiring existing housing.
It was the legislative intent that we added that the funds for '26 through '32 be used for that purpose.
Right. Okay. Well, that's what I'm reading
Yeah.
the document. So that's not changed in what the university submitted or what we're looking at.
Yeah. I think that would be a good question for the university.
Okay. All right. Just want to clarify because
Yeah.
it's important. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Okay, President Pines.
Good afternoon. My name is Darrell Pines, and I'm the president of the University of Maryland, and I'm honored to be here today to have the opportunity to testify on behalf of our capital budget request. I would like to thank Chair Zucker and the entire members of the committee for all their support for our state's flagship university. We're extremely grateful for the resources devoted to us by the governor and the General Assembly. And I want you to know we work diligently to be good stewards and our shared work towards benefiting the people and communities of the state of Maryland. We also appreciate the thoughtful legislative analysis by Ms. Sarah Baker. As always, it's excellent, and we'd like to offer a few responses to some of the concerns. First, the analysis recommends a deferral of $7.5 million in GO bonds for campus-wide building system and infrastructure improvements to fiscal 2027. Our campus spans over 1,250 acres and has 14 million square feet of space under roof. The replacement value of buildings on our campus total over $7 billion, and the estimated deferral maintenance is around $750 million. This recommendation will therefore defer implementation of some critically needed deferred maintenance work planned to be funded in fiscal 2026. So we respectfully request that you reject this proposed reduction and moving it to fiscal 2027. Second, the analysis of Zupnik Hall recommended that $54.7 million be funded from GO bonds and $4 million from PAYGO special bonds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund Energy Efficiency Account. This change of the fund source is not concerning to our campus. I was also asked to comment if any of the sustainability elements of the project are eligible for tax credits through the Inflation Reduction Act, and if so, what is the expected value of the tax credits? Our response is that the Inflation Reduction Act does not provide tax credits for overall energy efficiency. It provides tax credits only for certain technologies of clean energy generation, such as solar, wind, geothermal, and electric vehicle charging stations. The only element in the project eligible for tax credit is electrical vehicle charging stations, and that tax credit is fairly negligible. And third, in terms of graduate student housing site development, the analysis notes that the intent of the General Assembly is that the state provide $5 million annually from fiscal 26 to fiscal 2032 for the production and acquisition of below-market rate graduate housing. We appreciate the General Assembly's support of our efforts to address the shortage of affordable housing for our graduate students. This concludes my remarks, and I'll be happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for President Pines? Senator Roosevelt.
I don't have a question. I just want to say,
Go Terps
Go Terps!
on facilities renewal and on graduate housing.
And on NCAA basketball.
No, but seriously, Mr. President, I
Yes, sir.
appreciate your strong support on both of those. And as I think you know, this was through part of the same program where this graduate student housing program came from, the Community Preservation Trust. We just in the past couple of months acquired our first small building for graduate student housing. So we're on the road. So thank you for all your support.
Well, thank you, Senator Roosevelt, for your support and leadership in the city of College Park and for supporting all kinds of housing options for our graduate students.
Thanks
We
a lot.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. And President Pines brought up a great point. Senator Roosevelt, thank you for your leadership on the graduate housing. Anytime I hear about it, I'm like, I fear the Roosevelt. This thing needs to get funded. But anyway, any other questions for the President? Thank you very much. For the University of Maryland Baltimore campus, there had been someone that signed up, Alicia A. Are they here? Okay, I just want to make sure I flagged it. Okay, let's go on to University of Maryland Baltimore County. Ms. Baker.
So UMBC has 3 projects in the CIP. 2 are renovation projects with 1 program to receive funding in 28, and the other is the new student service building that is programmed to start receiving funding in 29. There's an update in the Spring Grove campus on page 2 in which $27 million of the $40 million authorization added in 23 is being used to stabilize the site, address state and federal environmental regulations, and prepare the site for future use. The BPW recently approved 2 construction bid packages for utility upgrades, totaling $21.5 million. UMBC is in the process of updating its facility master plan, which will lay the foundation for future development of the site. Discussion of Sherman Hall renovation starts on the bottom of the page, and the capital budget provides $21.2 million to continue construction, which is $7 million less than program last year. And this is due to a 3-month delay in the construction schedule related to the discovery of asbestos-containing material and additional work needed to reapply structural fireproofing. The budget also includes a pre-authorization in 27 to complete construction. The recommendation is back on page 2, and that is to approve the authorization and pre-authorization, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Ms. Baker, thank you for that thoughtful analysis. Madam President, come on up. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Good afternoon. I'm Valerie Shears-Ashby, President of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Thank you, Chair Zucker, and to the entire committee for your continued support of UMBC, and thank you also to Sarah for your thoughtful analysis, as always. Just a very few comments from me. First, our new Student Services building will centralize critical student support resources on the UMBC campus that include proactive advising, financial aid, transfer pathways, and career readiness. So we thank you for your support of that new Student Services building. On the Sondheim renovation, that project is emblematic of UMBC's commitment to expanding opportunities in graduate and undergraduate research, producing the next generation of psychologists, human geographers, ecologists, data scientists, and policy analysts. The building renewal will make urgently needed modernizations to this 50-year-old facility. And also then on the Sherman project, the renewal of Sherman is underway with Phase 1 opening in the fall of 2025 and Phase 2 scheduled for spring of 2027. And then finally on Spring Grove, just a quick update. We thank the state for its support of projects that will stabilize the site, address state and federal environmental regulations, and prepare the Spring Grove campus for future use. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Great job. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Baker, thank you. All right. Colleagues, we'll now turn our attention. Ms. Norton, if you can come up, we'll go with Bowie State University. Good to see you.
Thank you. Bowie State University has one project in the 2025 CIP, the Thurgood Marshall Library and Academic Commons. The funding in the CIP for fiscal 2026 is approximately $2.2 million in GO bonds. The summary for the project begins on page 2. The building is expected to be completed in January 2031 and will cost in total $251 million, an increase of $51 million from the 2024 CIP. The cost for this project has grown since fiscal 2023 due to Bowie State submitting a revised program that increased the scope of the project. This project was scheduled to begin in fiscal 2027, but has moved up to fiscal 2026. The 2025 CIP includes $2.2 million for design. The procurement for design is expected to begin in April, and design should start in October. Exhibit 1 on page 4 compares the funding schedules in the 2024 and 2025 CIPs. While the project has moved up in the CIP from fiscal 2027 to 2026, construction is still not scheduled to begin until fiscal 2029. Construction is expected to start at an earlier date, but the project will most likely be completed around the same time if there are no delays due to the 2025 CIP anticipating a 30-month construction period compared to 24 months in the 2024 CIP. On page 2, you can find DLS recommendations, which is to approve all authorizations for Bowie State University, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Great analysis. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. President Perot, come on up. Good to see you.
Nice to see you again. Thank you for your time today. I'm going to be joined by a couple of my colleagues. Joining me today is Manish Kumar. He's the Vice President for Administration and Finance, and Mr. Darrell Williford, the Director of Facilities. And again, thank you for your time today. And thank you to the members of the committee for your support of Bowie State University. Thank you to Kelly for that wonderful analysis. And just know that we are so very grateful for the governor's support and the support we have received from the legislature as we're trying to provide for more modernized facilities. I have to acknowledge your support and appreciation for the Martin Luther King Center that opened up this year. If you haven't seen it, please come to BSU. I know that you would be thrilled to see the learning and the activities that are happening inside that building. It is home to our communication arts, humanities, and liberal arts departments, as well as our growing Army ROTC program. We can continue to see great demand for BSU, students coming from 30 states, 37 foreign countries. And I have to just acknowledge and make sure that everyone knows that BSU, according to U.S. News and World Report, is now ranked number 11 among the more than 100 HBCUs in the nation. We're very proud of that. Most recently, we received the prestigious designation as a Carnegie Classification High Research Institution. And this points to the need for us to continue to get your support or seek your support for the new library and academic commons. The distinction as a high research institution points to the need for us to have such a facility to undergird the excellence that we see among our faculty researchers, as well as to support learning for our students. We are excited to finally begin the design for the new library and academic commons, and I truly appreciate all the past support. My concern, however, is for the length of this project. It is a 6-year project, and in 6 years, it's not designated to be completed until 2031. A lot can happen in 6 years with such a rapidly changing environment and a competitive environment that we're in higher education. And so I respectfully request for your consideration for adjusting the timeline in the budget so that we can begin construction in fiscal year 28 and complete the project in 5 years. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Madam President, maybe you and I can connect offline just so I get a handle on what you're thinking about timing. I mean, I see the back page, but I just want to make sure I know exactly, because I know we've been working very closely with you to make sure that the project stays on track. So
Yes.
Thank you for your leadership. Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so very
Yeah, of
much.
course.
Thank you.
Ms. Norton. Colleagues, will now move our attention to Morgan State.
Thank you. Morgan State University has 9 projects in the 2025 CIP. 4 of these projects are scheduled to receive $104.2 million in GO bond funding in fiscal 2026. The summary of the fiscal 2026 funded state-owned projects begins on page 4. The first project is the new Science Center Phase 2. The new building will house the biology and chemistry departments in the Dean's Office of the School of Computer, Mathematical, and Natural Sciences. The CIP includes $69.6 million in GO bonds for this project in fiscal 2026. The overall cost of the project has increased by $72.4 million to $336.8 million since the 2024 CIP. This increase is being driven by cost escalation for the building structures, which accounts for roughly half of the increased costs. Lab facilities and construction equipment have added another $19 million to the project. The project now includes $17.2 million to rebuild a portion of Stadium Way due to the construction of a new stormwater culvert. Morgan State has received funding for the slope stabilization of Stadium Way in the past through the deferred maintenance program. The president should address how this Stadium Way project differs from the deferred maintenance slope stabilization. The fiscal 2026 funding includes $9.1 million to ensure the building meets state's climate goals set by the Climate Solutions Now Act. DLS recommends reducing GO bond funding by $9 million for project costs attributable to the sustainability components. A related recommendation adds language to use PAYGO special funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund Energy Efficiency Account to fully replace the reduced GO bond authorization. On page 6, we have the campus-wide electrical infrastructure upgrades. This project will construct a new electrical substation as a single point of service for Morgan State, creating a dedicated power source, providing the dependability, resiliency, and redundancy required for the campus to have uninterrupted power. It is required to support the new Science Center and any future projects. The campus hit capacity with the opening of the Health and Human Service building. The total cost is $87 million, and this project is scheduled to receive $15 million in GO bonds in fiscal 2026. The project has a prior authorization of $500,000 and non-budgeted funds, which are institutional funds. These funds will allow Morgan State to accelerate the design process, which is expected to begin this month. The president should provide an update on when design is expected to begin. The Deferred Maintenance and Site Improvements Program starts on page 8. Morgan State has identified a backlog of roughly $300 million in deferred maintenance expenses, which this program is meant to address. And while no out-year funding is shown in the CIP, this is considered to be an annual program. The CIP includes $13.4 million in GO bonds for fiscal 2026. This funding includes $9.6 million for fire alarm upgrades, $2 million for the Murphy Fine Arts roof and exterior doors, and $1.5 million for central heating plant boiler repairs. The remainder funds overages of previously approved or funded deferred maintenance projects. The BRFA of 2025 reverted $10 million to the dedicated purpose account that was included in the fiscal 2023 budget. That funding has been partially offset by the program receiving an additional $8.4 million more than the planned 2024 CIP. Oregon State has used federal HBCU capital financing funds toward deferred maintenance needs in the past, but these loans might become less accessible with the new federal administration. The president should comment on how HBCU capital financing funds have been and will be used to address the university's deferred maintenance needs. And the president should also comment on whether the university has considered issuing its own debt to address these needs. The campus expansion Phase 1 Lake Clifton High School demolition project is found on page 9. The current building is being demolished, and the university will create a redevelopment plan for the site. $6.3 million is scheduled for fiscal 2026, with the total cost estimated at $17.6 million, and is expected to be completed in mid to late calendar 2026. The cost of the project has increased by $2.1 million due to construction manager fees. Oregon State was to submit a report on the redevelopment of Lake Clifton. It was not submitted at the time of the writing of the analysis. The president should comment on the status of this report and how the institution will ensure reports are submitted timely in the future. The summary of the out-year projects are on pages 10 through 12, which include the Carter Grant Wilson Building Renovation Project. The renovation will address insufficient space and inoperable and failing building systems. This project has been delayed to make capacity for the increased cost of the Science Center and the acceleration of the electric infrastructure upgrades. In total, the project is estimated to cost $52.1 million. Next, campus renovations. This program would address projects that have surpassed the DBM definition of deferred maintenance, but will reduce the overall backlog. This program allows Morgan time to clearly identify the scale of projects and submit facility program reports that identify the need for their renovation. We have the Dixon Research Center renovation and expansion. This project is estimated at $134.8 million and will renovate the Dixon building to house the physics department and construct an addition to house research and support office space. The new physical plant department grounds maintenance building is the next project and will build a garage to house grounds equipment. The department was previously housed in the now demolished Washington Service Center and is temporarily operating out of the Montebello complex, another soon-to-be demolished structure. This project is slated to cost $16.4 million. The final project, campus fiber infrastructure upgrade and replacement, will replace and upgrade the campus fiber system to improve reliability and ensure redundancy for communications and life systems. This project is expected to cost $43.4 million. The recommended actions are found on page 3. DLS recommends language to use PAYGO special funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund Energy Efficiency Account to fully replace the $9 million gold bond reduction recommendation for costs related to sustainability. With that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you very much for that great analysis. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. President, come on up. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair Zucker. Members of the committee, we certainly want to express our appreciation to you, to the General Assembly, and to Governor Moore for the investments being made in Morgan State University. We have always said year over year, but these are investments, and with the investments, the state of Maryland should expect a very, very high dividend from Morgan, and we feel that we are actually providing that. I want to also express my appreciation to Kelly Norton for once again doing an extraordinary job of actually preparing the analysis for Morgan. Introducing to my right our Executive Vice President for Finance and Administration, David Lachina, who will respond to one of the comments you've asked me to address, and to my left, Kim McCalla, who's Vice President for Facilities Design and Construction. As I indicated to the House on yesterday, Kim has been with me now as I conclude my 15 years at Morgan as president, and she has undertaken every one of the renovations and the new construction at Morgan, and we have brought every one of those projects in either on or under budget and on time. And so we really do appreciate the fact that she is the best at what she does in the nation, and many of the national publications have profiled her as such. I just really want to make a couple of comments, and then we will go straight to addressing the questions that you have asked us to address. First of all, Morgan State University is the fourth largest public university in our state now. We are the fastest growing university in the state. We are the third largest HBCU now in the nation. And of course, we are at enrollment capacity. We are about 11,000 students in Morgan, coming from about 45, 46 states, and of course, over 70 countries, but still the overwhelming majority of our students come from the state of Maryland, and every single county is represented on the campus. This unprecedented period of transformation in Morgan rests in several camps. First of all, I spoke about enrollment. Last year, we received about 32,000 applications for 2,400 spots in our freshman class. We have already surpassed 35,000 applications as I sit here today. Also, we are seeing unprecedented amounts of research grants and contracts and collaborative agreements coming our way. I had a cabinet meeting this morning, and my VP for Research and Economic Development, Dr. Willie E. May, who was the former director of NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, and also was the former Undersecretary of Commerce, reported that we have now surpassed $100 million in research grants, contracts, and collaborative agreements 6 months into the new fiscal year. This is really unprecedented territory for us. And Chair Zucker and members of the committee, that is really one of the great dividends that we are returning to the state. Also, just to stay with research for a moment, we are making our way now, into the group of the top very high research universities in the country. When Carnegie released its classifications publicly in February of this year, we were very close. Of course, we missed it by just a couple or so doctorates, but we have already surpassed $64 million in research expenditures for the first year that will be counted in the next Carnegie ranking, and we're well on our way to producing upward of 75 to 80 doctorates a year. So we have no doubt that when the Carnegie classifications are released publicly in February of 2028, that Morgan State University will join the University of Maryland College Park and UMBC and become the third R1 very high research institution in our state. The national publication coming out of the National Office of Patent and Technology Transfer, they produce a list every year of the top 100 universities in terms of patents, and no HBCU has ever made that list. Morgan actually made the list this year with a research expenditure base of only $29 million in research expenditures, yet we produced 13 patents. And over the last 4 or 5 years, in terms of the number of spinoff companies, we have, all those patents have led to several spinoff companies here in the state. Just to give you a sense of how that $29 million has returned 13 patents, a university 2 slots above us had research expenditures of $500 million, and yet only 16 patents. And so we are really, really punching well above our weight here. And I have to thank our faculty at Morgan. They're being inducted into the national academies. Their research is being published in some of the best journals, and yet they do what they do best, which is to excite young people in the classroom and take teaching quite seriously. And so with that, we'll go straight to the comments. You have asked me, first of all, to provide an update on when design is expected to commence with regard to our campus-wide electrical upgrades, and I can report to you that design services are indeed being procured, and we expect to have a team on board within the next few weeks. Next, in terms of comment number one, the president should address how the Stadium Way project differs from the deferred maintenance slope stabilization, and I'm going to refer this to Kim McCalla.
Good afternoon. Thank you. It's actually the Stadium Way Slope Stabilization
I
Project.
don't mean to interrupt, but do you mind speaking into the mic? Only because we want to hear you that much. We want to make sure it's, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And actually, it's one project. The Stadium Way Slope Stabilization Project is one project which is stabilizing the slope of Stadium Way going down to the Herring Run. We're actually rebuilding the slope so the road doesn't fall into the Herring Run. The culvert project is a project from the Science Project that will be bringing over a 6-foot-plus culvert across the end of the road. So we have two different projects working in the same street.
Next, you have asked the president comment on how the HBCU capital financing funds have been and will be used to address our deferred maintenance needs. And you have also asked me to comment on whether the university has considered issuing our own debt to address these needs. And I'm going to turn to Mr. David Lacina.
Yes, so we've used the HBCU capital financing program as a self-directed supplement to the institutional capital needs and into support that the state has given us from our capital projects. So we've used that money, over $20 million directly for deferred maintenance, and in addition, over $45 million for full renovation of various facilities. So we are doing the best we can to do what we can do on our own to address deferred maintenance issues. But again, we do have, like several institutions, a very large backlog of deferred maintenance. As relates to debt, we have looked at public market debt, and frankly, the HBCU capital loan is the most efficient use of capital for an HBCU. We have at least a half-point savings in interest costs, as well as a reduced cost of issuance with the capital loan, HBCU capital financing program. So we are at about, our debt limit is at 140. We are currently using about 110, and so the headroom we have at about 30. We're looking at several other projects that are not on the capital register that we maybe need to actually use that money for. So we are doing what we can to address capital needs in addition to the support that's provided by the state.
Next, you've asked that MSU consider the use of a facility condition indexed, and I'm going to turn to Ms. Kim McCalla.
Thank you. We actually do use facility indexes, but we use them as a part of other analysis for projects. We are going through a campus master plan and a facilities renewal plan also, so we will be readjusting those indices.
And then last, you have asked me to comment on the status of the redevelopment of the Lake Clifton property. And so just for the record, about 3 years or so ago, we were able to acquire from the city of Baltimore 59 acres of property, which is located about 3/4 to a mile from the campus. This is the largest acquisition of real property in the 158-year history of Morgan State University, because the campus was growing so rapidly that we were landlocked. The way we are approaching this, however, is to engage in a comprehensive redevelopment of that entire corridor. For those of you familiar with Baltimore, and Senator McCray, this is in your district, we are going all the way to North Avenue, and basically we are going to have the development to start at North Avenue and then go all the way past our engineering building going toward Towson. So that long-term, that redevelopment is going to encompass about 4 or so miles and all of the neighborhoods. And so that's going to really take a moment to get our hands around that. And so we have actually reached the final throes now of acquiring a consultant to come on board and help us with that. But for any other details, I'm going to turn this once again to Kim McCalla.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are in the process of onboarding our consultant for the campus master plan of main campus. As a part of that, we will be determining the facilities that will want to go to Lake Clifton, research, other similar types of buildings. Once we identify that, then we will turn to develop a Lake Clifton master plan where we start taking in the site itself in addition to the communities around it. And I've been in touch with the communities on a regular basis, listening to what they're doing near and around the area. So we will maintain that process throughout. And we'll have community members from both the main campus master plan project and for the Lake Clifton master plan project.
And with regard to the recommended actions, the university fully concurs with the recommendation. And we thank you once again for the investments being made on the capital side in Morgan State University.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vice Chair.
First, just thank you for your leadership, thank you for your example, and just thank you for your mentorship, Dr. Wilson. And I say that just from a personal standpoint. And Ms. Kim, Madam Vice President, we all sang the same accolades that Dr. Wilson is saying, just in reference to our national treasure with Morgan State University. And just like you said, just the projects coming on time. A lot of times we get a bad rap in the city, but this is one thing that we know we're consistently doing right, and that's under your leadership. Dr. Wilson, I asked the question because obviously, you know, Lake Clifton is like my baby right now. And at this moment, I think that this may not be fruit that we actually see bear, but we are laying the foundation for whoever comes behind us from that standpoint. And when I looked at Ms. Norton's notes, I'm gonna tell you why the written piece, and I know I talk to you all frequently, just conversations, it's just the scope that we deal with in the city in reference to challenges. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I may hear something and I may not get an understanding, but I could always go back when it's in writing and then refer back to it and understand. And my thing is I just want to make sure that I'm clear on the timeline in reference to Lake Clifton and how we're looking at it. I see the demolition I can see in sight, the storage of arts and things of that nature, but just making sure that we understand, like, what is Morgan's goals, maybe it is, in reference to timeline. And that's why the report in reference to Lake Clifton is consistently being asked for every year, just because I just don't want to lose sight of it because we're dealing with something over here in Baltimore City or putting out a fire over there.
We certainly appreciate the perspective that you bring to this project, Senator. We are right there with you, which is why we kind of stepped back a bit to make sure that we are engaging fully with our neighborhoods, because as my colleagues at Morgan know, I say this all the time, that as we lead Morgan through this era, we have to understand that I'm not going to be president at Morgan for many more years, and they are not going to be in these seats for many more years. And so, therefore, I'm not making any news. I'm just saying that I have been in and out of these seats now long enough to know that when you're leading an institution, you have to lead it absolutely in the present. But more importantly, you have to position it for a time when you won't be there, and the institution will still be thriving and responsive to whatever is coming its way. And this is the way we're looking at Lake Clifton. Stepping back, listening to the community, engaging a consultant to help us in this process. The first part of this, of course, will be the demolition, but the most important part is going to be the plan. What is this going to look like over a 25 or 30-year period? And we'll get one opportunity to get this right, and that's what we want to do. And so, Kim, feel free to add.
Sure. As I mentioned, we're starting with our campus master plan, and it was delayed through reasons out of our control. But we are actually starting that, and that will start help guiding us to what we want to do down at Lake Clifton. And once I have that information, then I can start making the arrangements for the other developmental master plans for that site.
Got it. I'll take the conversation offline, but you guys know how much I admire the work that you all are doing, but more importantly, just the anchoring that you're doing right there in the city of Baltimore that needs you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Any other questions for the panel? Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Colleagues, will now go to Towson. Mr. Richards.
Good afternoon. My name is Micah Richards. I want to thank the chair of the committee in the great state of Maryland for allowing me to speak before you today. This is the fiscal 26 capital budget analysis for Towson University. Starting on page 1, in the exhibit, the total fiscal 26 capital improvement program request is around $71 million, all for Smith Hall renovation. Page 2, in the exhibit, 99% of the $71 million is GO bonds. Page 3 will be discussed later in this presentation. Page 4, Towson is currently completing program part 2 for submission to the Department of Budget and Management for the Academic Achievement Center. Page 4 and 5, as of December 2024, Smith Hall's East Wing was demolished and currently being rebuilt. The West Wing is currently being renovated. Page 6, Exhibit 1, the total project cost of Smith Hall increased by around $13 million to around $166 million compared to the previous project cost due to the new geothermal system and equipment costs. To address carbon reduction in the Climate Solutions Now Act, to make Blackwell Hall net zero ready, to decrease fossil fuel energy production, to earn a Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design Gold certification, the project will implement a geothermal well-filled heat pump-based HVAC system and utilize solar panels with a cost estimate of around $9 million. The Inflation Reduction Act federal tax credits could partially reimburse this geothermal system. As stated on page 3 and 4, DLS recommends reducing GeoBond funding by $9 million for project costs attributable to sustainability components. A related recommendation adds language to use pay-as-you-go special funds from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund Energy Efficiency Account to fully replace the reduced GeoBond authorization. Page 7, the new Student Services Building will be constructed and the existing Enrollment Services Building will be demolished. The funding will start in fiscal 2029. The electrical substation expansion and improvements project will provide power to the western portion of the main campus and the entire south campus. The funding will start in fiscal 2027. Page 8, the estimated operating budget impact will be around $1 million starting in fiscal 28 due to the project's added gross square footage. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the analyst? Thank you very much for that great analysis. Mr. President, come on up.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you as well. Thank you, Chair Zucker and Vice Chair McCray. Good to see you both. I also want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today and members of the committee. And also thanks to Michael Richards. I see you just took your pin off, though. You're wearing the great TU pin, so I had a chance to see that. It was great to have you on our campus and glad to have you out. To my right is Steve Jones, our COO of the university campus, and glad to have you with us today as well, Steve. Let me begin by saying how grateful we are at TU for the support of the General Assembly as well as the governor and the state for the capital improvements to our campus. Today, Towson University is the second largest public university in Maryland. We enrolled nearly 20,000 students, of which 90% of our students hail from and come from Maryland. 60% of our identified students identify themselves as a underserved minority, and 92%, a full 92% of our recent graduates stay, live, and work in Maryland. I often like to say that TU is an engine of opportunity, where students from all backgrounds thrive and achieve success. We're also an engine of innovation, a hub, a place of consequential research and scholarship that is addressing and will continue to address the critical needs that we face in our community and our state. And we're also an engine of workforce development, training the workforce of tomorrow and creating economic growth for our state as well as our region. But TU's impact, and this is really important, begins with our facilities, and we are very appreciative, as I said, for the state's generous support for capital improvements in recent years, including this budget cycle. As we consider and look to our future facility needs, we thank you and very much appreciate for your moving up the time frame for our much-needed electrical substation. That project is important to keep the lights on and keep our buildings warm and keep the energy flowing. We're also very appreciative for your support for the geothermal energy project for the newly renovated Smith Hall, two critical upgrades to our campus infrastructure. Also, a brief mention of Smith Hall. The geothermal project is part of it, but that project is continuing. It's in flight, in construction, and we anticipate it being delivered both on time and in budget. I also want to mention, as Mr. Richards did, that our Academic Achievement Center funding, that we are not able to spend the $3.5 million in bond funds until we receive final program approval from DBM. I'm pleased that we are now in the final phase of that, and we anticipate the program approval from DBM in the next few months so we can begin the planning for that important project. As mentioned also in the DSL report, TSU's buildings have a long average life. They're on average 25 to 30 years old. They do have much deferred maintenance, and like many institutions, our older facilities require a substantial amount of funds for deferred maintenance, an important feature. We struggle to keep up with these associated costs, and as you know, we've requested additional funding to support these important efforts for deferred maintenance in our properties, which will ensure that we can continue to provide the best possible facilities for our students, in turn allowing us to continue to provide a first-class 21st century education for those who are studying, learning, and growing at TU. To that end, TU soon will begin formulating the university's next campus master plan. We envision that this important planning process will provide a blueprint for our facility needs, both for the short term, for today, but also for tomorrow in the long term. TU provides a robust return on investment for our state as well as for our students and their families. And we're pleased to make a positive difference for Maryland, both today and for our state's future. Together with your support, we will continue to serve as an engine for our state, and an engine for our state's economic vitality. Thank you again for your support. Thank you for support of Towson University. Happy to answer any questions. Appreciate it very much. Glad to be with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you. Good to see everybody.
Richard, we're going to move on to Salisbury.
This is the fiscal 26 capital budget analysis for Salisbury University. Starting on page 1 in the exhibit, the total fiscal 26 capital improvement program request is around $35 million, all for Blackwell Hall renovation. Page 2 in the exhibit, 100% of the $35 million is GO bonds. Page 3, DLS recommends for all GO bond authorizations and pre-authorizations for Salisbury University to be approved. Page 3 and 4. The construction for Blackwell Hall started in August 2024. The funding plan shifted around $5 million from fiscal 27 to fiscal 26. The project's estimated completion date was extended from August to October 2026 due to delays in the reviews and the Board of Public Works approvals of the second and third portions of the construction contracts. To address carbon reduction in the Climate Solutions Now Act to make Blackwell Hall net zero ready, to decrease fossil fuel energy production, to earn a Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design Gold certification, the project will implement a geothermal well-filled, a high-performance building envelope, and utilize solar panels. The state is funding the Geothermal Energy Initiative and could partially be reimbursed by the Inflation Reduction Act federal tax credits. DLS requests for Salisbury president to brief the committees on the sustainability elements incorporated into the project, including estimated costs and source of funding and the utilization for federal tax credits. Furthermore, the last part of the construction contract, the guaranteed maximum price form, has not gone through the bidding process and may exceed the current funding. Page 4 and 5, the College of Health and Human Services, MAG's renovation and expansion project will renovate MAG Center, construct an addition to the existing building, and demolish Devil Bliss Hall. This project will implement a geothermal energy initiative. The estimated cost of the project totals $275 million. Funding will start in fiscal '28. Page 6, the estimated operating budget impact will be around $72,000 starting in fiscal '27 due to the added gross square footage. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Well, thank you very much for that great analysis. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Salisbury, come on up. Welcome, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you very much, Chair Zucker, and the entire Vice Chair McCray and the entire subcommittee for your support of Salisbury University. Thank you also to Micah Richards for your thoughtful analysis and way to put that Sammy the Seagull pin on your lapel. Thank you for switching between us. I am joined today.
Can I? Do you have any extra pins? I want to. That's.
I know. I love this.
And,
yeah.
And was it a capital expenditure or no?
I am joined today by my Vice President for Administration and Finance, Aurora Edenhart Pepe, and my Chief of Staff, Eli Modlin. It is my pleasure to provide testimony to the Maryland General Assembly for Salisbury University's fiscal year 2026 capital budget request. On behalf of the entire university, we are extremely grateful for the Governor and the General Assembly's ongoing support for Salisbury University's capital projects. The continued support you provide our university has positively impacted the lives of countless students across the state and strengthened many of the communities on the eastern shore of Maryland. Our fiscal '26 capital budget request includes continued funding for the Blackwell Hall renovation and the planning for the College of Health and Human Services building. While the Performing Arts Center is not part of the current fiscal year '26 capital improvement plan, we seek future support for this project to expand access to the arts and enhance educational opportunities. I will make my report short today. We have been asked to comment on the eligibility of our Blackwell project to receive funding through the Inflation Reduction Act, and we do expect to collect between $3 and $5 million from those tax credits. This concludes my testimony, but I thank you again for your continued support. We sent ahead answers to the remaining question, and if we have any questions for us today, we're happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I do have something for Eli. Eli, I should have given you a heads up on this. We're going to be putting in budget language, committee narrative, to ask if Salisbury can report on whether or not the Washington Commanders will or will not win the Super Bowl this year. So I think it's December 1st. But
They will.
They will. All right.
They will. Right.
Never mind.
And I'm thrilled to share with you,
right.
Chair Zucker, that Dan Quinn is actually our commencement speaker this year.
See? Mr. Vice Chair, it's on. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Turn it over to you, Mr. Vice Chair.
At this time, committee, we'll move on to our last one, which is miscellaneous grant programs, and we'll have Mr. Jacob Polikoff. That's what I was looking for. Okay. I'll take it first. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, sorry. I'm used to being drummed in by Chair Zucker having some sort of comment for me. This is different. Thank you, Senator King. I'm here today to break up our long-running trend of university capital analyses today with the miscellaneous capital program analysis. The Maryland Consolidated Capital Bond Loan, or MCCBL, of 2025 includes GO bonds for a number of miscellaneous grants. Fiscal 2026 funds reflected in this analysis total $147.7 million in GO bonds and an additional $39.5 million in PAYGO general funds for a total of 37 projects, including multi-year projects. $56.3 million provide funding for grants pre-authorized by the General Assembly in last year's capital budget bill, and 4 projects are listed in the 2025 CIP as ongoing multi-year commitments. The aggregate future commitment to those projects is totaled at $35 million from fiscal 2027 through 2030, and of that, $19 million is programmed for ongoing facility improvements at the Maryland Zoo. On page 2, we have our first exhibit, which shows a county breakdown of the miscellaneous capital grants, showing that the most funding goes to Baltimore City, followed by Prince George's County, and then Baltimore County, with a few other counties also receiving funding. On page 3, exhibit number 2, the yellow line shows the number of projects in each category, and the blue bars show the total funding for that category. So we see that economic development has the most funding for its projects, but the most projects in total go to the cultural category. On page 4, we have exhibit number 3, which shows a funding history over the past few years of miscellaneous grants. The yellow line shows the percentage of miscellaneous capital grants as compared to the total general obligation bond and PAYGO general fund total. On page 5, we have a analysis of the Historic Annapolis Restoration Project. Historic Annapolis manages and maintains 12 state-owned historic properties in Annapolis through a master lease agreement with the Department of General Services. Fiscal 2026's proposed authorization will support the ongoing restoration of the James Bryce House to its original 1774 appearance, and also includes the installation of a life safety fire suppression system at the William Paca House to protect the building and its visitors. Both of those properties are designated as National Historic Landmarks, and there's a total of $4.05 million requested for fiscal 2026 for Historic Annapolis. On page 7, we have the Maryland Zoo infrastructure and habitat improvements. Fiscal 26's proposed funding totals $4.75 million and will support planning and construction of improvements to aging infrastructure at the zoo. The 2025 CIP programs an additional $4.75 million annually throughout the forecast period, which goes through fiscal 2030. The Maryland Zoo, just for fun, is the 3rd oldest zoo in the country, occupying 135 plus acres in Baltimore City, of which at least 45 acres are currently developed. In addition to state capital funding, the zoo receives an annual operating grant budgeted through the Board of Public Works, and a portion of that grant can be applied to capital projects which don't qualify for GO bond funds. In fiscal 2026, that operating grant totals just over $5.6 million. On page 10, we have the National Aquarium. Fiscal 2026's proposed funding is focused on supporting construction to replace the Pier 4 building roof and other critical infrastructure improvements and public safety and lighting enhancements. As of the 2024 session last year, the National Aquarium CIP estimated $94 million of capital needs over the next 8 years. This year, there is $1 million requested for the aquarium. On page 11, we have the Maryland Economic Development Corporation's Cannabis Incubator Project. DLS is recommending approving this project with language. There's $5 million requested, and there's an additional $2 million in deficiency funding for this project. The project will provide a grant to the Maryland Economic Development Corporation to renovate the Catonsville Armory to be used as an incubator space for new cannabis businesses, and the project is required by statute. A couple of chapters from the 2023 session required MEDCO to work with the executive branch to acquire and construct or refurbish at least one cannabis incubator space. MEDCO submitted a report in December 23 identifying potential sites for these spaces, and later received $2 million in GO bonds for the project in the MCCBL of 2023. This was followed by the State Treasurer's Office advising that bond funding could not be used for the project, as cannabis remains illegal under federal law. The MCCBL of this year deauthorizes that $2 million in general obligation bonds and replaces it with $2 million in PAYGO funds, as I mentioned, as a deficiency, and provides the $5 million in PAYGO funds for fiscal 2026. On page 12, we have Exhibit 4, which shows the projects that the Department of Legislative Services is recommending approving funding for. And on page 22, we have Exhibit 5, which shows the list of projects where DLS is recommending reducing or wholly deleting funding. So the first one of these is Adventist Health, the new Fort Washington facility. DLS is recommending deleting $2.5 million in GEO bond funding for the project. Although the fiscal 2026 capital budget bill includes $2.5 million, there's no planned spending of state funding in the project plan for fiscal 2026, and the project has previously received $5 million authorized for fiscal 2025, which has not yet been spent. On page 23, we have the Baltimore Museum of Art fire suppression and capital improvements. DLS is recommending reducing $750,000 in GEO bond funding to limit usage of state funds to 50% or less of the project's total cost. The Bowie Mill Bike Trail, DLS is recommending deleting the funds for this project. The proposed $2.1 million for fiscal 2026 would bring the total state spending on the project to $7.8 million, and additional state funding won't be necessary for this project until construction begins, which is currently estimated to begin in fiscal 2028. The project has previously received $5.7 million. For the Downtown Partnership of Baltimore Strategic Operations Center on page 24, DLS has recommended that funding for this project be provided by the Department of Housing and Community Development's capital appropriation fiscal 2026 and recommends deleting the funds from this place. On page 25, we have the Glen Echo Park Spanish Ballroom renovation. This is a federal property owned by the National Park Service and jointly managed by NPS and Montgomery County. Total project cost is estimated to be $10.2 million, with $1.5 million being provided by the state, despite the property being federally owned. DLS is recommending deleting $1.5 million in GEO bond funding. Also on page 25, we have the Port Discovery Children's Museum. DLS is recommending deleting the $2.5 million GEO bond authorization for the project. The fiscal 2026 allowance includes those funds, mainly for construction. However, the museum has not demonstrated that it could provide the $8.95 million in non-state matching funds necessary to progress the project. As of the submission of the worksheet, Port Discovery had fundraised $550,000. On page 26, we have the Salisbury Regional Airport new hangar project. The total project cost is estimated at $15.8 million, and no funding from the county has been identified for the project. And $14.3 million in future funding for the project is expected to come from as yet to be realized fundraising. A portion of the project should be supported through county funding. Therefore, DLS is recommending reducing the GEO bond authorization for the airport hangar project by $750,000. Also on page 26, we have the Westport Capital Development Cloman Street relocation. DLS is recommending deleting the $1 million GEO bond authorization for the project. The total project costs estimated at $12 million. $4 million in general funds previously been authorized for the project back in fiscal 2023. Including prior authorized and future planned funding, the total state share is about 2/3 or $8 million of the total project cost. Due to the share of state funding that has already been provided, additional state commitments can be deferred to a future fiscal year. On page 28, we have Exhibit 6, which shows the pre-authorizations from last session as compared to the amounts funded for fiscal 2026. And starting on page 29, we have the budget bill language for the GEO bond recommended actions, which I've just read out from Exhibit 5. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Polikoff, I did have one question, and I'm not sure if this was technical, if I'm missing something. So on page 19, the project name says Southern Bridge Career and Education Center. Then when I looked on page 29, it said Southern Streams Health and Wellness Center. I just wanted to confirm, are these two different projects? Are they the same projects? Is it just a technical?
That's going to be a technical error, and my apologies for that. I believe that is actually the same project. There was some confusion regarding the technical side, the naming of the project. I'm going to go ahead and guess right now and then confirm or deny for you later.
No guesses needed. Just shoot me offline in reference to what's the official name of the project, and
yes,
if you can, also the address. That way I can just match it up.
Thank you. My apologies for any error that might be there.
No error at all. Colleagues, we do have 2 pages of witnesses for the miscellaneous grants programs, but I did want to recognize that if you did not get your funding deleted or reduced by DLS, there's like 100% chance that you're going to get funded from that stuff. So you can still come up and comment, but I just wanted to acknowledge that piece when you're giving your comments. At this time, I'd like to call up Ms. Donna Jacobs. I'm going to call them in fours too. Jennifer Nichols, Ed Schlesinger, and Carter Polikoff.
Great to see you. Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Donna Jacobs. I cannot resist the urge to tell you about my project here. I cannot. I'll be brief. I'm the director of the Morton Street Dance Center and the artistic director of Full Circle Dance Company, which is Maryland's largest professional modern dance company. And for those that know me, you don't know that I wear these hats, but now you do. Morton Street Dance Center is really grateful to the governor to be part of this miscellaneous budget, and I thank you, Mr. Polikoff, for the positive recommendation. Morton Street and Full Circle have been part of the Cultural and Artistic Foundation of Maryland for quite some time, 32 and 25 years respectively. We're located in Baltimore City, but our students hail from Anne Arundel, Carroll, Hartford, Prince George's sometimes, and certainly Baltimore City and County in large measure. Our professional company members come from as far as the Eastern Shore and Washington, D.C., and we've toured as far as Arizona and Tennessee. We've contributed and continue to work with the community as artists, teachers, educators, employers, purchasers of services, and collaborators, including with the Ballet Theater of Maryland. Most importantly, we play a key role in the lives of our students. Dance has opened new and sometimes unimaginable vistas for them. Dance is one tool in the arsenal to creating successful young adults. And our students are living testament to the impact of the arts. Many go forward as 2 arts magnet schools, both high school and middle, universities, distinguished conservatories, including School of American Ballet, Alvin Ailey, American Ballet Theater, and more. Several have returned to Morton Street, and I'm really proud of this, after college as teachers for me, and one has just returned from 2 years touring internationally. Many others go on to academic pursuits and use dance as a measure of their success in their applications. And I'm proud to say that in 2024, Morton Street, this is why I have to talk to you, was named #1 out of 192 schools in the region. So these funds would allow us to nearly double the number of students that we serve and meet the needs of so many more that are interested in dance, the training, and the confidence that it instills. We've outgrown our space, and what we have is in great need of renovation. And these funds will also allow us to expand by building a new studio, and creating internal bathrooms, dressing rooms, and replace our specialized injury preventing floors. I thank you, and I urge a favorable disposition. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair McCray, members of the committee. I'm Jennifer Nichols, the president of Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center. So just on behalf of our patients, staff, and the East Baltimore community, I just want to express our appreciation to you for your commitment to strengthening Maryland's healthcare infrastructure. So I will begin and end my comments with thank you.
Vice Chair McCrary, distinguished members of the Maryland Senate Capital Grants Subcommittee, my name is Ed Schlesinger. I'm Dean of the Johns Hopkins University Whiting School of Engineering, here to respectfully request that you preserve support for our design center proposal, currently funded at $2 million in the capital budget, and to which Governor Moore added an additional $2 million in his supplemental budget as well. This project will allow Johns Hopkins to design and construct 35,000 square foot multidisciplinary student design center on Johns Hopkins Homewood campus. And the primary goal of the project is to develop a new hub for undergraduate students to design, prototype, test, and manufacture engineering solutions to real-world problems. This center will answer the question of how we teach students as we enter a world increasingly disrupted by AI and all it brings to the educational enterprise, and how we support them for future success. And so, in addition to the prototyping labs, there will be many collaboration areas where students can come together to undertake the activities that can be assisted by AI systems, but which require human ingenuity and creativity. The facility will also serve as a hub for activities that could extend beyond Hopkins and bring in students from across the state and indeed across the country. And we believe that it aligns with the state's goals of increased economic competitiveness by enhancing the innovation ecosystem in Baltimore City and the state of Maryland. I sincerely believe that the project will ultimately result in enhanced economic activity in Baltimore and Maryland, and therefore I respectfully request that you indeed maintain support for this worthwhile project. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair McCray and members of the Senate Capital Budget Subcommittee. It's nice to see you all today. I'm Carter Polikoff, not to be confused with another Polikoff, different spelling. I'm the president and CEO of Port Discovery Children's Museum, and thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of the governor's capital budget. I wanted to kind of jump right into this and just talk about the projects that we were proposing, which were totaled $2.5 million, which was for exterior renovations to the building, which if any of you have been to Port Discovery in quite a while, it's unsightly and deteriorating, the walkways falling apart, and there's safety concerns. And we really need to put in some capital improvements in that space. And in addition, we're proposing construction of new classrooms for our new At Play Learning Institute, which we've built over the last couple years, which is a new statewide training hub for early childhood educators. And we've raised significant programmatic funds for that program, and we are looking to build classrooms to support that programming. So I wanted to respond and clarify the capital analysis and recommendations from DLS staff that stated Port Discovery had not demonstrated the ability to provide the $8.95 million in non-state matching funds. And I just want to say that while the museum has more than $10 million, well more, in renovation needs, we have phased all of our capital projects into smaller units, allowing us to fundraise and execute renovations kind of at the same time. So this particular project, we already have designs. We are ready to go. We've spent $550,000 in getting everything ready so that we can begin construction as soon as the money is received. And so I'm asking you to consider including the $2.5 million in the budget for this year so that we can move forward at quick pace with the exterior and these classroom renovations.
Not to be confused with Jacob Polikoff. We do hear you very loud and clear, and we also know the important work. Ms. Donna, it's been a significantly long time. You made me think about my little babies that aren't babies anymore, but I remember when they were doing dance and how important this is for our young folks, so just thank you. Colleagues, seeing no questions or comments, let's call up the next four if we can. We have Kevin Kramer. We have Danielle Wharton. We have Madam Director, Dr. Asma Naeem. We have, let's call up the board chair to Jim Thornton.
Thank you, Vice Chair McCray and members of the committee. I am Danielle Wharton, Vice President of Clinical and Support Services at Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center. In the interest of time, just as President Nichols just mentioned, I want to express my extreme gratitude for your support of our project. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Vice Chair McCray, it's a pleasure to be here. Esteemed members of the subcommittee, thank you for giving us this opportunity. I am Asma Naeem, the Executive Director of the Baltimore Museum of Art, the first director actually from Baltimore. The Baltimore Museum of Art respectfully requests your approval of the full amount of the $1.5 million included in the governor's fiscal year 2026 capital budget. The BMA, as some of you may know, is Maryland's largest art museum and recently ranked by the Washington Post as one of the top 20 museums in the entire country, beating out venerable museums in New York, Washington, and elsewhere. We punch well above our weight. We house an internationally renowned collection of 97,000 objects and our mission is to make art accessible and relevant to people's lives while engaging visitors in critical social and community issues through art and artists. As Senator McCray may know, for a recent exhibition that's about to be unveiled. The museum's capital project has already been significantly reduced due to the loss of funding from pre-authorized monies from the state and is now focused only on critical infrastructure. It's crucial for the museum to receive the full $1.5 million reflected in the capital budget to leverage the additional private funding we have secured and complete the project on time and within budget. Otherwise, we might be forced to finance a portion of the project, resulting in redirecting valuable resources from supporting our core mission to funding interest expense. And the three aspects of the capital project are implementing state-of-the-art fire suppression for our 3 first-floor storage vaults, installing a new air-cooled chiller to enhance our HVAC system for optimal climate-controlled conditions for our art, and lastly, upgrading the Northwest Cone Gallery, which houses our renowned cone collection. I now turn to our esteemed Chair of the Board of Trustees, Jim Thornton, to share a few additional points.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Vice Chair McCray and esteemed members of the Capital Budget Committee. I'd like to just build on some of the comments that our Executive Director shared. The BMA attracts 250,000 visitors a year, with over 31,000 coming from outside the state. In FY 23-24, our education programs reached over 14,500 students across the state. The project's revised scope, totaling $12 million, prioritizes essential facility needs for our 210,000 square foot facility and aligns with collection management best practices. Construction began in February 2025 with a 1-year timeline. It is critical that we adhere to our construction timeline, as the temporary closure of our main exhibition galleries for this project has impacted our revenue streams for FY25 and FY26. We have emptied our storage vaults to prepare for the installation of the fire suppression systems. We are deeply grateful for the state of Maryland's generous past support of our capital improvements projects, including critical fire suppression upgrades. We respectfully request your approval of the full amount of the $1.5 million included in the governor's fiscal year 2026 capital budget. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair McCray and members of the committee. My name is Kevin Creamer, and I'm the Program Director for the Catholic Charities Intergenerational Center, which is included in the governor's capital budget for a $2 million miscellaneous grants. In light of Vice Chair McCray's encouraging words, I want to keep my remarks very brief, but just wanted to use this opportunity to lift up all of the community partners that have lent their voice and vision to this project. On behalf of all of those partners in Catholic Charities, I want to express my appreciation for your continued support in the budget.
Colleagues, seeing no questions or comments, we'll call up our last panel. That is Catherine Boylan, Dennis Rasmussen, Daffodil Bites.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Katie Berner, the CEO of the Glen Echo Park Partnership for Arts and Culture. the nonprofit that supports Montgomery County in operating Glen Echo Park. Montgomery County has also submitted testimony as well. I respectfully urge you to support the $1.5 million in funding which was included in the governor's capital budget for the rehab of the Spanish Ballroom at Glen Echo Park. This investment is critical to preserving a Maryland cultural treasure. Built in 1933, the ballroom is a nationally recognized historic landmark and a piece of living history, known for its Spanish colonial revival style and iconic maple dance floor. The ballroom, alongside the historic Densel Carousel, is central to Glen Echo Park, which has evolved from a Chautauqua retreat in the 1890s to an amusement park with a rich civil rights protest history, and since the 1970s, as a thriving arts and cultural center. Glen Echo Park is a model of successful partnership. The $10.2 million restoration has already secured major contributions, $3.25 million from the county, $1.3 million already committed from federal government, with an additional $3.25 million to come. We also expect to obtain $1.2 million in private funding for later stages of the project. But Maryland's $1.5 million in FY26 is essential to unlocking the federal match and keeping this project on track. The state of Maryland has been a partner at Glen Echo Park site since the 1990s. The site and project will employ Maryland residents and draw visitors to Maryland, paying taxes and generating revenue for local businesses. The dance program attracts 45,000 dancers each year, which we expect to increase significantly when we add heating and cooling and make the venue functional. We have 325 social dances a year and welcome 250,000 visitors. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. We urge you to support the $1.5 million allocation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair McCray and members of the subcommittee. My name is Daffodil Baez, and I serve as president of the Adventist Healthcare Fort Washington Medical Center. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Fort Washington Medical Center opened in 1983 thanks to the efforts of the local community. And we see that Prince George's County residents have some of the worst health outcomes of any region in the state. That's not because residents are uninsured or lack resources. What they lack is access to primary care and specialty physicians, which is why so many patients presenting in our emergency rooms and hospitals are very sick due to delaying care. When we evaluate the data, we know that Maryland has some of the lowest number of beds per state in the U.S., and Prince George's County in particular, where our facility is located, has the lowest number of inpatient beds per 100,000 at only 69 beds. That's the lowest number in the state. Compared to other counties, Prince George's County also has the lowest average number of active physicians, and one of the reasons for this is the lack of clinical space in which to house their practices. We have physicians who are willing and able to come and establish care in Prince George's County, but we're unable to do so because we don't have the physical footprint for it. Adventist Healthcare is committed to helping solve these and other health challenges in the county by building a new medical center with outpatient service capacity, and have acted on our commitment by purchasing land on which the new medical center can be constructed and have started the permitting process. Governor Wes Moore visited our site last year and verbally expressed his commitment to the project. We thank the state for their support so far in 2024. We're concerned that if the $2.5 million allocation in 2025 is eliminated, we gain no forward momentum towards fulfilling the goal of a desperately needed medical center, and therefore, we respectfully request to preserve funding for the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you to everybody that testified before our respective committee. Just wanted to lean in, colleagues, and say that that was the last respective report out. So y'all have a nice evening.
Thank you.
I'm also one of them. I'm also one of them. I feel so terrible. I